Good evening and welcome to the Arizona Capital Times Meet the Candidates. My name is Luigi Del Puerto and I'm the Associate Publisher and Editor of the Arizona Capital Times. I will be moderating tonight's final meet and greet. I hope the last 4 nights have been informative and the discussions have helped you to form your opinions about the candidates running for office. And if they win, they will be deciding some of the biggest decisions for the state, including the shape of the state budget for K-12 education, public safety, and public health. I want to thank the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission for sponsoring this series of events. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission administers the Citizens Clean Elections Act, which voters passed in 1998. The act seeks to restore citizen participation and confidence in the political system, improve the integrity of the Arizona state government, and promote freedom of speech under the U.S. and Arizona constitutions. To tell us more, please welcome Gina Roberts, the Voter Education Director of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. Gina?
Hi, Luigi, and hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in this evening and joining us to learn more about the candidates that are running in your district. And of course, thank you to the Arizona Capital Times for bringing us this series this whole week. Clean Elections sponsored this event because our goal and our mission is to help voters participate in the political process. And that includes everything from registering to vote to the logistics of voting, but of course, also voting informed and learning about your candidates. And that's exactly what tonight is all about. It's an opportunity for you as the voter to learn a little bit more about the candidates who are asking for your vote. It's timely because early voting began July 8th. I have my ballot. I'm sure many of you have your ballot as well. And we hope that the tools offered by the Clean Elections Commission, such as our voter education guide, which was sent to every household with a registered voter, so hopefully that was in your mailbox too, and of course our debates, which were moderated by the Arizona Capital Times, and the information available on our website. We hope that all of these tools help you to cast an informed vote. After tonight, if you'd like more information about the candidates, such as their website links, contact information, social media links, and of course about how to vote in the primary itself, including how to get your ballot and where to go on election day if you're not voting early, you can visit azcleanelections.gov. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy meeting your candidates tonight.
Thank you, Gina. A few housekeeping notes. Please note that this is not a debate. Candidates are here to tell you about their campaigns and perhaps try and persuade you to vote for them. It's also an opportunity for you to send in questions, and you can do that by submitting your questions via the YouTube description for this event. You'll find that in the just right underneath the YouTube screen. And we wanted to get to as many questions as we can tonight, so do send in your questions that way. Also, we will be bringing in the candidates by batch, and we will take a very short break after each batch of candidates to get the new batch of candidates in. And so we will take a short break, and then we will get back into a meet and greet. And finally, don't forget to subscribe and like the Arizona Capital Times Morning Scoop website. And tonight, we will be hearing from candidates from Legislative Districts 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. And with that, we will take a very short break. Stay tuned. We will be right back. the associate publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. And with us tonight are candidates from Legislative District 26. We have Bill Lothridge, Jana Granillo, Patrick Morales, and Marcus Cifuentes. And I think I'm going to start by asking each of you why you're running and also tell us a little bit about yourself. I think I'm going to start with Jana.
Oh, thank you. A little bit about myself. I'm a native Arizonan, born and raised in Phoenix. I've been in Tempe for about 25 years. And I'm running to offer the district a choice in leadership. I have, as a public health professional, I have a passion for health and equity. And so this has been my driving force to run and to help connect the community to the legislature. That's it. That's why I'm running.
Thank you, Jana. And Bill, go ahead, sir.
I don't know if I can be that short, but thanks. Thanks, Luigi. I'm Bill Lothridge, and my family's been in Tempe since 1930s, and I'm a 35-year veteran of law enforcement. I retired from law enforcement, 8 years with the Phoenix Police Department, 35 years with U.S. Customs, and I've operated a private investigator's business since then. At one time, we had 90 employees. I'm running to make a difference, actually. I became dissatisfied with what I saw, what was happening in the politics. I'm a calm guy. It seemed like politics was chaotic. Everybody's in their corners. They're fighting with each other. They can't agree on anything. Everybody says they want to agree, but when they get there, no way do they agree. I've always been outside the box. Just ask any of my managers. We have to do what's right. And now, especially given what's been going on in the last couple of weeks, we need to be concerned about our safety, health safety, food safety for kids, food safety for seniors, safety for seniors. So I decided that I'd throw my hat in the ring. Here I am.
Thank you, Bill. And Patrick?
Hi, my name is Patrick Morales, and I'm running for one of the House seats in the Democratic primary. I've been serving on the Tempe Elementary School Board for the last 5 years. Educational equity is really my focus, my bread and butter. And believing that education is a human right, and not just that, but that healthcare is a human right, and that we can make sure that we focus on providing care to all of those that are affected by COVID-19 and providing benefits both at the state and local level to help out everyone. I'm running because for a long time, I think our politics held us at a standstill, especially in this district. I think a lot of the leadership had not passed a single policy in I think over a decade. So I think it's time for someone that can pass policy that can be effective. And I've passed policy with Democrats, Independents, and Conservatives on the school district across the board, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And Marcus, go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Marcus Defuentes. I did 8 years active duty in the U.S. Navy after graduating high school here in Arizona. I returned back to Arizona after I graduated. I'm a naval reservist now. So ever since I got out of the Navy, I've been working in trade jobs. So I'm a tradesman. I wanted to bring the voice of the tradesman to the Arizona legislature. I wanted to bring the voice of the middle-class family. I'm a middle-class father of 3. I've got a 4th daughter on the way. So, I looked at the leadership, and it seemed like the leadership that was in our district was very focused on a single set of tasks and was not interested in representing Tempe as a whole. And so now I'm trying to, work with our current leaders, try to work with people on either side of the aisle. Everybody says that, it's just so important that right now, above all, that we come together and work together and do what's right for all Arizonans.
Thank you, Marcus, and congratulations on the fourth child on the way.
Thank you very much.
So, one of the questions that we get is how you would approach your working relationship with Governor Doug Ducey. There's the Kathy Hoffman approach, in which she's working behind the scenes and getting things done that way. For example, she said she was seeking for more funding for schools to kind of give them the flexibility in case their enrollment goes down, and she was able to get that money. And so there's that approach on the one hand, and then there's the more critical approach on the other hand. I want to ask you, where would you put yourself on that spectrum? What would you prefer? Let me start with Bill.
In terms of working with other people, especially with the governor, they have different functions, legislative function and the administrative function of the governor. We need to be able to work together to decide what's going to happen. And the budgets and things that have to be worked out and the money that's going to be spent needs to be spent wisely. And we have to determine where it needs to go, how it needs to get there, and do it in an efficient way. Governments are inefficient just by the nature of their business. So it's important that we work together and do so without anger. People get mad about these things. They express anger, and it doesn't do anybody any good. You need a calm approach. We need to be able to work together, figure out how we're going to fund the things that need to be funded, especially this year when funds are going to be short, and make sure that we're using our money wisely for the taxpayer.
Sorry, Bill. So what would your approach more like? Would you be more like Kathy Hoffman working behind the scenes with the governor, or would you be more critical of the governor's actions?
I'm not sure criticism works for anybody. If you want to work with somebody, you have to work around the differences. And being critical, if behind the scenes is what you have to do, you can work together in a public way. You don't have to be behind the scenes. Everything needs to be in the open. We need to be able to see what's happening. The business of making deals behind the scenes just doesn't work right. You don't have to air differences in a critical, angry way. You can have your differences, express your differences, show respect to the other party, and work forward from that.
Thank you. And Patrick, same question to you, sir.
Yeah, I think I come also from community organizing, and I think it's always important to approach things from the outside-inside perspective, depending on what the task is at hand. I think the current leadership on the Democratic side within our district cannot pass a bill because they won't even be heard, because they've been so critical of not just the opposition party, but fellow Democrats. And I think that's one of the big errors, and that's not necessarily leadership. My first campaign was Prop 204 and debating Governor Ducey, then treasurer, around the state was a hard task. He's really good, and but I was being critical of him, and now as a school board member, a lot of what I have to do and learn how to do is act for all people behind the scenes. 5-6 days before Superintendent Kathy and Governor Ducey acted on schools, we chose to close down our school district and call districts throughout the state. I was here phone banking in my living room because I knew that they were going a little bit slow. So I think it depends on the specific instance, but I favor a holistic approach on both.
Marcus, same question, sir.
So one thing that I've always noticed in life is that the more critical you are of somebody, the more likely they are to shut down and double down on what they're doing. And so my personal approach, my personal belief in the governor is that, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. It's easy to look at what he's doing and, really attack it and think, I would have done this at that time. So what we need to remember is that, he's also a human being. We're all working together. Ideally, we're all trying to move toward a common goal. And so I'm not one for criticizing. I'm not one for any kind of smear campaign or anything along those lines. What it basically comes down to for me is that, I would try to put out a policy that's better without attacking.
Thank you, Marcus. And Jana, the same question to you, ma'am.
Well, I can tell you what I've done in the past working with another grassroots group is in this particular situation regarding the abuses of immigrant children in Southwest Keys, is that we wrote a letter. We engaged legislators. We engaged legislators on both sides. We engaged community organizations to help advocate for our cause, and we use the media to bring attention to it. So the other thing is, as a former strategic planner, when I worked for the state of Arizona, I'm very pragmatic in identifying what it is that we're trying to accomplish and identifying different ways of getting that, and strategic planning its goals, and also I know how to look at the master list for the state of Arizona and programs. So I think there's a bunch of approaches that you can use, given the situation.
Thank you. Let me ask you about what your thoughts are on the governor's handling of this pandemic so far. As you know, the governor, for example, has extended the moratorium on evictions to October. He has required the restaurants to operate at only 50% capacity. He has shut down the operations of some other businesses like gyms and bars. If you were in charge, if you were in his place, if you had the authority, would you shut down restaurants today, for example? Let me start with Marcus.
So that's a very complicated question, but to give my short answer, I would have to see a significant amount of data to support that the shutdowns would be less harmful. It would be less harmful to shut down than to shut down and then see the economic turmoil and what would happen to people's jobs, what would happen to people's livelihoods overall. So it is certain that COVID-19 is not a joke. It's certain that COVID-19 needs to be taken seriously. I feel like there's significant overreach in power in certain areas, and that's why the legislature being well respected in the state is so important.
When you mentioned there's some overreach in some areas, can you cite at least one of them? Like, where do you think there has been some overreach?
Well, I can tell you that so with the restaurants being closed down and then reopening and suddenly being closed down again or put back to 50% capacity, that kind of roller coaster that's going on with small businesses in particular. I know several people that have been laid off by these kind of policies. It makes it very hard for a small business person, a small business owner to plan. And so it might not even be overreach. It's just the wishy-washy back and forth that is, it's confusing. It's very concerning.
Thank you. And Jana, the same question, ma'am. If you were in charge, would you shut down the restaurants today or tonight?
Okay, my connectivity is coming in and out, but I think it's the same question regarding the governor and his handling of the COVID-19. First of all, I am a public health professional. I'm retired, but I still have connectivity to that community and have been an advocate. So, and the other thing, when I worked for the health department, I did work 1 year in preparedness. So I have a different perspective, I think, globally. First of all, we have plans for the health department, for Homeland Security. And there should be performance indicators as to what are the risk factors that are out there. And I can talk forever on this because that is my thing. But very quickly, there are people that are at risk that live in congregate settings. Certainly identify those at-risk areas and go after prevention. Just go after it hard.
Just to go back to the question,
So
ma'am. Yeah, just to go back to the question, if you were in charge, would you shut down the restaurants 100% today?
Restaurants where they have the ability to have distance, no. Bars, yes. They have people that are congregate together, so that is a way of spreading. So you got to look at where the spread is and what the risk factors are.
Thank you, Jana. And Patrick, the same question to you, sir.
Yes, I think immediately, yes. I think we need a mask mandate, but also as Marcus mentioned, there's been a lot of different directions coming from the governor's tower. Ultimately, there's kind of a failure of leadership, and I understand he's being pulled in the left and the right ways by both parties. But I think right now it's ultimately up to him, and he needs to act not just quicker, but with more drastic measures. I think if there would have been a mask mandate early on, we would have been able to be closed, 2 months, and then this problem would be over, similar to what we're seeing in many of those early states that did close. So we were the last to close, but the first to open. So now we're closing again. And I think people are confusing that with a second wave, and this is still the first wave.
So just to go back to the question, would you shut down the restaurants 100% if you were in charge today?
Yes, with small business relief, because I am also a small business owner. I think not just the owner, but the employees need to be eligible for relief. To this day, I haven't gotten either a personal or a small business loan since the beginning of this, and so it's been hard to keep everything afloat.
I'm sorry. What's your business, sir?
I own a small marketing firm, so since we're a small business, we were supposed to be eligible for COVID relief, but we're not. So we haven't been able to get any because all the banks are out.
I hope you do get that relief. And Bill, I think you have the last word, sir. If you were in charge, would you shut down the restaurants tonight?
If that's a simple question, the answer is no. But it seems like the question has some complexities to it about the governor and his actions. I go back to, I don't want to be critical of the governor given what's happened to us in the last couple of months. It's just there's so much contravening or information that just is from both sides. They take the same facts and it can come up with a different idea every time. So I don't want to criticize him for what he's doing. I wouldn't close the restaurants. The restaurants I've been into we are free individuals, and that's what builds America. Is people are individuals and they have the freedom to make their own choice. If you don't want to go into that restaurant, you don't think it's safe because they're not doing things properly, then don't go. Give us the information about how this is spread. Use the plan, follow the plan that Jenna referenced, and that's the best way to do this. Let us make our own decisions about how to do it. And I don't believe that by closing the restaurants, just arbitrarily closing the restaurants, would be a good idea.
And with that, we are out of time. Bill, Jana, Patrick, and Marcus, I want to thank you again for your time this evening. Enjoy the rest of the night, and I'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To our viewers and our listeners, we're going to take a very short break. We're going to bring in the next batch of candidates, and we will be right back, so stay tuned. To meet the candidates, my name is Luigi Del Puerto. I'm the associate publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. Don't forget to send in your questions via the YouTube description. You'll find a link there, and you can send in your questions that way. We have with us candidates from Legislative District 27. And we have Garland Shreves, Diego Rodriguez, and Tatiana Pena. I think I'm going to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running. Let me start with Garland.
Well, my name is Garland Shreves. I was born and raised in this legislative district. I'm the youngest of 9 children. We grew up poor. And I feel, having moved back here to this district, this is an opportunity for me to get back to my community. And I just feel extraordinarily blessed to have an opportunity to live in a country that gives me a platform and the ability to be able to share my ideas with the community. And I think because my ideas are different, that a lot of people are going to receive them and be supportive of that. And so far, it's been very reflective. People in the community have been very supportive.
Thank you, Garland. I can see that you're running as a team with Tatiana. Is that correct?
I would say we're very supportive because, we both are Southsiders. We grew up here in the South Side, and we care deeply about the community. And, we have some commonalities that bring us together.
Thank you. Tatiana, go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Tatiana Peña. I was born and raised in South Phoenix. I'm a daughter of immigrant parents. My parents, when they came to the United States, they actually established themselves here in the South Side. And so I'm proud to be a born and raised Southsider. I decided to run for Legislative District 27 because I was seeing that we weren't having a real strong voice that really had brought the issues to the state and made things happen. So some of the things that I'm for education equality through school choice. That's something that we've been blessed with here in Legislative District 27. It's helped our kids compete with children in other communities. I'm a pro-lifer, and I'm for strong moral family values. As a Latina, this is what I was raised with. And I think we need a strong Latino voice in the state that stands for these values that right now they're not being represented. I'm strong for criminal justice reform, being born and raised in Southside and having been a teacher as well. I see how this has impacted so many families and so many children. And I want to make sure that we actually start solving it and not playing politics. I'm also for less taxes and for more freedom. I've experimented living outside of Arizona for a little bit and seeing how, bringing up taxes to make things work better, but then it never actually changes. And it actually hurts communities like ours a lot. It makes your cost of living and everything really difficult. And I want to protect Arizona. There's a reason why people move to Arizona and move to our community. It's because they can make a life for themselves. And I want to make sure that we keep that going forward.
Thank you, Tatiana. And Representative Rodriguez, go ahead, sir.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Representative Diego Rodriguez. I'm one of the current incumbents here in our district, a Democrat, lifelong Democrat. And my political career it's very recent. I only started in 2016 when I decided to run for county attorney because I wanted to see the values that I know our community believes in: transparency, accountability, justice, diversity, integrity. I wanted to see those values in office and being represented. And that's why when 2018 ran around and some of the leaders from our community came to me and asked me to run for office, I said yes, because it was important to me to step up as a person who is interested, as a person who has a voice, as a Latino who has been involved in the criminal justice system for the majority of my 25-year career as an attorney. It was an opportunity to join the fight and to engage and to represent the working families of our district. And so I'm running for re-election. We're on the cusp of some major exciting changes in Arizona, building a better Arizona, a more diverse Arizona, a more inclusive Arizona. And we're going to leave behind the racism and the bigotry of the early 2000s and the late 90s. And we're going to move into a new decade for this state. And we're going to turn this state into what we'd all like to see in the future, and would appreciate your support.
Thank you, Representative Rodriguez. We've had Black Lives Matter protests in the last couple of weeks. Some of those protesters believe that the police should be defunded. And some of them, when they say defund the police, they mean completely wipe out the police's budget. I want to ask you if you support it. Let me start with Tatiana.
I do agree with the sentiment that Black lives does matter. Of course, being born and raised in South Phoenix, I have seen many examples where people are falling victim to, occurrences that they didn't need it. and there is people judging people based on their race and the pigment, right? But there's a difference between being supportive of this, of changing the racism problems that we have in our community, in our country, in the entire world, because it's worldwide, by the way. And then there's also the official movement. Now, there are things with Black Lives Matter, the actual movement, it's an actual organization, and it's not a 501c3, and here are some of the things that they say. They want to dismantle patriarchal practice. They want to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. These are the things that actually help communities. These are the things that have actually strengthen the Black community, the Hispanic community, all communities. We want to strengthen our families. We want to strengthen those nuclear families. Yes, we have single family households and we need to help them out. But why are we going to focus on dismantling that? That's not what, and I don't think the vast majority of the African American community, the Black community, or the Hispanic community, any minority community would agree to what the actual movement stands for. So I am for, taking on these racial injustices. That's why I'm really strong on prison reform. That's why I want to have the best schools in our community. That's why I'm a pro-lifer, because I do see that roughly 1,000 babies are being aborted daily, and no one's wondering about that. No one's saying anything about it. So I want to be that voice. But the movement, the official movement, I cannot say that I agree with that organization.
Thank you, Tatiana. Representative Rodriguez, the same question, sir.
I support the Black Lives Matter movement. And just to address some of the things that were raised, let me tell you why. In Arizona in particular, we spent the better part of a decade. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she entered into school in 1998, in 2008. And for the next 10 years, from 1998 to 2008, there were budget cuts of our schools every year. And over that same period, DOC, the Department of Corrections budget increased over that same period by hundreds of millions of dollars. So we've already defunded education in Arizona. So let's talk about why our current law enforcement model needs to change. It needs to change because law enforcement everywhere in the United States needs to accept responsibility for three things. One, that it teaches violence as a reaction to noncompliance. Now, I didn't say violence in reaction to violence. I said violence in reaction to noncompliance. We've seen time and time again where officers are using physical force and even deadly force against people who are simply non-compliant. That's got to stop. That's part of the police culture in the United States, and it has to change. The second thing we need to change is the systemic racism that's present in law enforcement in the United States. We know from several investigations that there are open white supremacists and open racists that are members of our law enforcement agencies. We know from the statistics. Recently, there was just a study released just today from the ACLU that documented that African Americans, Black Americans here in Maricopa County are charged with more crimes and they serve more time. So we know that. And I've seen it in the system in my career. I saw it as a prosecutor and I've seen it as a criminal defense attorney. And the third thing we need to do, other than those, we need to change the culture of law enforcement, because law enforcement does not have a culture of transparency and accountability. We know this, again, just today. What did we find out? That the DPS officer who shot Deon Johnson, what had he done prior? He had used his taser 3 times on his dog.
So just to go back to the question, sir, the idea of defunding the police in terms of effectively, wiping out their funding, do you support that?
Well, we're going to change the model. So we are going to take funding from the current police system, and we're going to build a different model. That money is going to be taken from police agencies, and also the Department of Corrections, and it's going to be put back into social services, drug treatment, and our schools.
Thank you, Representative Rodriguez. Garland, the same question, sir.
I support changing processes with the police department, but do I support Black Lives Matter? The answer is unequivocally no, I do not. I believe that every life is important, regardless of the color of their skin. I agree with the minority community that did not engage in the looting and burning and attacking of innocent civilian businesses and people who were just trying to travel on the street. I support the minority community who wants justice for everyone in our community. Before the recent issues blew up in the news, I posted on my website, garlandaz.com, a video talking about criminal justice reform, and it's very encompassing all of the issues that we need to support. One of the things I will say about the police is that I do believe that after 9/11, our police departments all across this country became more militaristic and left the concept or ideas of community policing. Police departments used to have what's called PALs, and I believe it was a police athletic league that would really help to try to build relationships directly with at-risk youth in the community. Well, those funding was cut off. And I think it's important that we refocus, if it's what Tatiana or Mr. Rodriguez is speaking of, is that we redirect funding back to more of a community-based policing. And I think that that's what our community wants. And I think changing the culture of the training to be less forceful, perhaps, is something that's important. I think we have to do that. But it's really difficult for me to get behind Black Lives Matter movement, that organization, with the fact that on Father's Day weekend in Chicago, 104 African Americans were shot, allegedly by African Americans, with 14 children dying in the arms of some of their parents, and nobody marches for that. Now, as a parent, I'm incensed at that. We should all be incensed by that. So the fact that we would pillage the village over two people that may have allegedly been wronged by the police, when you have children dying in cities across this country that have major gun control laws, and the people can't protect themselves. The gangs and criminals are running rampant. And until we want to address that all lives matter and every one of those people who were shot on Father's Day, where's the march for them? Let's march.
Thank you, Mr. Garland.
Safety.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Garland. We have I think we have time for just one question, and there is a proposal on the ballot that's going to legalize recreational marijuana. I want to start with Representative Rodriguez. Will you vote yes on this proposal, sir?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I fully support the legalization of adult use. Fully support it. However, I can tell you that the current initiative, I still have to look into it. I have major problems with it. I have not taken a position on it yet. Right now, I'm leaning towards opposed because I think it puts too much power in the group of current license holders. It's going to give them a huge economic advantage. It's going to create real profound barriers to entry. The expungement portion of it is, I think, in my mind, going to lead to more litigation unnecessarily. It should just be automatic, and it's not. And I also think that it does not make accommodation to allow for communities of color, persons in communities of color, to get access to those licenses, those dispensary licenses. And as we all know, and the statistics bear out, communities of color have borne the brunt of the criminalization of cannabis in this country and have been the majority of the people who have served time for simple possession crimes.
So you're undecided at this point. It seems like it.
No, I'm leaning no.
Okay. Thank you. Garland, same question, sir. And just real quick.
I'll try to be as quickly as possible. First, it's no secret. I've answered many surveys already. I support the legalization of marijuana. I'm one of very few Republicans who do. I oppose this ballot. We need to exhibit in the legislature leadership on the issue of legalizing recreational marijuana in our state. I absolutely oppose the ballot initiative. What the public needs to understand, if we don't take the leadership in the House and Senate to legalize recreational marijuana, one of these ballot measures are going to pass. They're going to be terrible for the public. Leadership needs to be shown. The vast majority of Arizonans who at least I know and speak to me support legalization of recreational marijuana for adults.
But just not this ballot measure.
Not this ballot measure.
Got it. And Tatiana, I think you have the last word, ma'am.
I want everyone to understand where I stand on any decision that I make. I think about the children on any decision. So when it comes to these issues, I have to think about how is this going to impact the child that's being raised by a parent that is recreationally using marijuana? Okay. How is that going to impact an unborn baby inside the womb that a mom is addicted to recreational marijuana? So all my decisions will always be based on the safety of the children. We as adults, we tend to make a lot of decisions and use data here or our feelings and our reactions, what our friends think is popular. But at the end of the day, we need to have a voice for the biggest voiceless in our community, and that is the children. So I want everyone to know that's who I am.
So just to go back to the question, it seems like you're a no.
No, actually, I was going to answer, but you interrupted me. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I do not support the ballot measure.
And with that, we are out of time. I want to thank you guys for spending the evening with me, with the Capital Times. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you around.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our viewers and our listeners, we're going to bring in the next batch of candidates. And so stay tuned. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Arizona Capital Times Meet the Candidates, and we have with us candidates from Legislative District 28, Ken Bowers and Janet Jackson. I think I'm going to start by asking you both why you're running. Also, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'll start with Ken.
Okay, well, the reason I'm running is that I was a Department of Corrections officer for 20 years, and I came to believe that there's tens of thousands of young men and hundreds, at least, of young women in prison who shouldn't be there. I want to change the prison system so that we stop sending nonviolent offenders to prison. I want nonviolent offenders to pay fines and restitution to their victims and never go to prison, where we make them into thugs instead of patriotic Americans, like is what we should be doing. That is an absolute enormous change to our system. I wasn't able to get it done by jawboning anyone else. I talked to many people about it, and I believe the only way to get it done is to be elected to office and have access to actually drafting the legislation. If you will go to my website at votekenbowers.com, I'll tell you a lot more about that. I also am a Trump supporter. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, and I have various ideas about land reform in Arizona. You know, the federal government owns 70% of the land in Arizona. They were supposed to give that to the Arizona state when we became a state. but that was never done. And I think that during the tenure of President Donald Trump, this is our chance to get that land. I believe Donald Trump would sign it off to us. So I want to try to start to get that done. That's about it.
Thank you, Ken. And Jana, the same question to you, ma'am. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Well, my name is Jana Jackson, and I'm running for the House of Representatives for the Legislative District 28. And I'm running basically because I want to serve people. I want to serve children, and I want to look for the workforce. I want to work towards our workforce for the year 2050. I've been in education for 28 years. I'm a teacher. I teach at North High School. And I've done lots of other things. I've worked for the legislative office, the Capitol in Tallahassee, Florida, as well as serving NASA as an aerospace education specialist. And in all the times and all the places in all my life, I've tried to serve children so that the children will be able to have that extra push that I didn't have. I grew up in the inner city of Chicago. I went to the poorest high school in the inner city of Chicago. I went to one of the poorest and representative Olive Harvey College that represented my neighborhood. And so I decided a long time ago, more than 30 years, that I would serve children. And like I said, I'm teaching at North High School, and I just decided it's time for me to get up and do something rather than coming home, sitting in my kitchen and talking with friends and neighbors as to what could happen. And so I'm running for the children. I'm running for the people here in Arizona. I am running to serve them as a good Republican legislator.
Thank you, Jana, and thank you, Ken. I want to ask you about an initiative that's going to be likely going to be on the ballot this November, and that increases the tax on higher income earners in Arizona, and the revenue goes to education. Ken, let me start with you. Do you support this ballot proposal?
You know what? I haven't actually been inside a public school in almost 50 years, so I don't really know what's going on in the schools. And so I don't take positions about school funding based on rumor and slogans that chanted by people on the street. Before I take a position about school funding, I want to know the real facts. How much are the teachers being paid on an hourly basis? How many hours do they work? How many months a year do they work? I don't accept a statement that the Arizona is 49th in the nation, because I don't really know what that means. Some state has to be 49. So I'm going to say that I won't take positions on schools or education until I know the facts, which I will research. My mind is open. I don't have preconceptions, but I am looking for the truth about that situation.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned you haven't set foot in a school in about 50 years.
In a public school, yeah.
Public school, yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. I'm just curious. Are you going to try? Well, let's assume, for example, that we have COVID-19. Were you going to try and get inside a school setting? If we didn't have this problem, this pandemic that we're having right now, would you have done it before? Let's say, for example, at some point during this year.
My deal is I want to change the prison system. There's a lot of things wrong with the prison system, and this issue of putting people in prison who are nonviolent and turning them into thugs. That's the most pressing thing, but there's a lot of things wrong with the prison system, and that's why I'm running for office. I don't claim to know anything about the school system.
Got it.
I will turn to people like Jana to help me, who is an authority on the school system. Rather than simply make up something based on lack of information.
Jana, the same question to you, ma'am.
Well, I first want to thank Ken for complimenting me. And that means a lot to me as being one of the partners that I'm running with. Going back to the question, I was wondering if you could just reword it for me, if you could just...
Yeah, so there's an Invest in Ed initiative. This is a proposal that is going to tax or increase the tax on higher income earners in Arizona, and the revenue goes to education. It's likely going to be on the ballot this November, and I'm wondering if you support it.
Well, when it comes to income taxes, I think that we are taxed enough. So as far as taxing people that make a certain amount, I'm not for taxing people. That's number one. But the most important part of what you had said was education. And if you actually look at how much money we have already given to education, it's not about giving more money to education, but allocating the money properly to education. My whole life has been in school and education. I teach right now in North High School, and I've taught selectively all races of children as well as all incomes. And it's not about putting money into a system, it's about allocating the money that is already within our system.
Let me ask you about a quick follow-up about that. When you say allocating it into the system, and less so than putting more money into the system, exactly how would you allocate the money that's for K-12 education? If you can flesh that out just a little bit and give us maybe an example.
Okay, so for an example, in the school district in which I teach, lots of money have been given to a coding academy. The coding academy is no more than 3 miles from one of the schools that's a Title I high school. So if we're going to allocate money to a coding academy, and we're not going to prepare the children that are 3 miles from that coding academy, then we haven't allocated the money into our children. We've allocated the money into a building. That means if you walk into a building and you see that the ceiling is dripping water, and that school has been given the same amount of money as another school that is basically the same age with the same problem, each district will allocate money through the school board as to where that money will be placed. That's the reason why you have some high schools that may have a $50,000 scoreboard and some schools that maybe they only have a $10,000. So we're talking about allocating the money and then using that money once it's allocated properly. I do not believe that we need to add any type of taxes. We don't need to increase any type of taxes, but we need to look at the money that we're using in education. And I've spent my whole life in education so that I can give back to education. And by me teaching, including summer school, just finishing summer school, I really understand the allocation of what is given into our school system. And then when we look at the teachers, Ken had mentioned the teachers. If you look at the teacher bookstores and if you look at places like Walmart or Office Max, you're looking at places that already have put all of these school supplies on sale. Then if you can turn around and look at the teachers that are filling their carts with hundreds of dollars worth of materials to bring into their classroom, every teacher gives. So when we talk about allocation of money, some teachers have to give more than other teachers. And if we look at how much we're giving, we're looking at where that money is going, then we'll find out that it's not more money we need in taxes for education, but how that money is being spent once it goes to the school boards.
Let me ask you just a quick follow-up question, and I'm going to go to you, Ken, because I do want to talk about prison reform with you. But Jana, a lot of these decisions are made at the school level, and they're made at the school district level. There's the whole idea of local control, for example, let the districts decide what they want to do with the money. And so the approach is that, the state provides funding and then the districts decide how to spend that money. Would you prefer that the state actually decide how that money is allocated?
No, I don't think the state needs to allocate the money, but I do think that we should be responsible to make sure that when we talk to the school board members, many of these people understand, many of the people that apply to be school board members, that we are responsible for making sure that they understand what we mean by allocations of budgets. So I am not putting a blame on anyone. I'm saying we as a group, as a family, as people, we need to get together and support each other. My expertise is not Ken's. And I would be foolish to go over Ken when it comes to reform because he's an expert in it.
Right.
But it is my responsibility to work with him and for him to make sure that I have all of the necessary information I need for me to make an informed decision.
Thank you, Jana. Let's go to a prison reform, Ken. What exactly is it that you want to do if you were elected to the legislature?
I think Jana's answer was really a fine answer. She obviously has a detailed knowledge of the prison system, and I hope that the voters of District 28 give us Jana Jackson as a representative. Now, what was your question?
What is the first thing that you want to do if you were elected to the legislature and so far as prison reform?
Well, I want to submit a bill that decriminalizes it, stops sending nonviolent criminals to prison. I could describe to you what happens to a young man who's stolen a car, for example. His victim never gets any compensation if the state doesn't make any fines out of it. but he gets sent to prison where he's recruited by a gang that he has to join in order to survive his 4 years or 5 years. When he gets out, he's an angry thug for the rest of his life. And why do we do that to people? I've seen it happen over and over again in prisons that young men, 18 or 19 years old, who have a vacuum between their ears, basically they're not men yet, they're kids, come into a prison system and are turned into thugs. I want to submit a bill to put the state in a position of getting revenue from those people by paying fines. I want the victims to get restitution for their loss. If you've stolen their car, you have to effectively buy them a new car. But I don't ever want a young man who's stolen a car to go into a prison.
So when you say, you want nonviolent offenders to not spend time in prison, and that to your legislation, that's going to apply to everybody, right? So all nonviolent offenders, regardless of what kind of crime they committed.
Of course, if it's nonviolent, and the law would define violence very carefully. We have hundreds of women in prison for prostitution, and I want to stop sending women to prison, or anyone to prison, for prostitution. I don't understand why we're doing that, but we do.
And I guess the final question I have for you is just real quick. What do you make of the governor's handling of this pandemic so far?
Well,
Ken, let me start with you.
Starting with me, okay. My father was a newspaper boy in Camp Taylor, Kentucky in 1918 during the Spanish flu, and he spent a lot of time telling me about what he saw when he was a little boy. I think the flu situation is something we need to take very seriously. It can be a lot worse than anything we've experienced. I don't know I don't know, claim to know about the schools. I don't know what's really going on with respect to this flu virus, but I would assume the governor does know and the president knows. We should rely on what they're doing and trust them.
Thank you, Ken.
It's a potential catastrophe.
Thank you, Ken. And Jana, the same question to you, ma'am. Just real quick. What do you make?
Very quickly, my father was a part of the Korean War. And I remember him and his friends sitting in the back talking about polio. And polio was actually crippling children all over the world. The United States was one of the main countries that came together and said, we're going to stamp out polio. Now, when we think of the virus that we have right now, I think under the leadership of our president, we will be able to do the same thing. I don't see the virus destroying our world. I see us coming together as a world united and us looking for a way in which we can stamp out this virus, the way polio was stamped out in the 1960s.
And a quick question to both of you, and just a yes or a no. Would you support a statewide mandate to people to wear a mask? Ken, yes or no?
Yes.
And Jana?
No.
And with that, we are out of time. I want to thank you both for spending the evening with us. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you around.
Thank you so much.
To our viewers and our listeners, we're going to bring the next batch of candidates in. And so stay tuned. We will be right back. and welcome again to the Meet the Candidates. With us tonight are candidates from Legislative District 29. With us are Richard Andrade, Martin Casada, and Teddy Castro. I guess I'm going to start by asking you, in the case of Martin Casada and Richard Andrade, why you're seeking re-election, and for Teddy, and why you're running, and also tell us a little bit about yourself. In fact, I'm going to start with Teddy. Go ahead, sir.
How you do today? I want to thank everybody for having us on here today. First of all, for me, I have been in West Phoenix most of my life, not all my life. I grew up in Maryville, born and raised. I have a part of a real estate company that we have 5 real estate offices in the district that we serve with over 150 agents that we help families get into homes. And that's about my business. I decided to run for office because I felt like that seeing families every day and talking to them about their financial needs, their woes, their worries of home ownership, as well as the rentals rates increasing, as well as just what they're not making for a living every day in order to survive on the regular. I felt it's necessary for me to step up as a real estate professional, as a father, and as a son, because my mom is a senior living in a senior living area that, she has her own struggles. Even with my help, we go through things as a family. And growing up in Maryville, I realized that how much it's changed, and not that any candidate that's on here is any worse or has done anything wrong. It's the fact that we just need some change. We need to make a difference. It needs to be some new ideas, a new lens brought to the table, a new business perspective. We need to make sure that LD29 becomes the jewel of the West Valley, because this is where the heart of the workers that are making our economy run are where they live and where they dwell and where they spend money. And so I want to make sure we have that opportunity for them.
Thank you, Teddy. And Senator Casada, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Luigi, and everyone for putting on this event here tonight. My name is Martin Casada. I have the honor of representing the people of Maryville and Glendale in District 29 as their state senator, and I'm running for re-election again because I believe that the people of Maryville and Glendale, they should have a voice that they can trust, who knows their experiences, who knows their struggles, their joys, their pains, their beliefs, and their values. Those people deserve to have a voice that they can trust, that's going to vote in a way that is consistent with their beliefs and their values. There aren't a lot of political figures like that anymore that can live up to that standard and inspire that trust. But I've done that over the last 3 terms in the Senate, and that's not a campaign promise that I'm making now. It's a record that speaks for itself. So I'm looking to continue that servant leadership to the people of Maryville and Glendale in District 29, and I'm anxious to earn the people's votes once again.
Thank you, Senator Casada. And Representative Andrade, go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Luigi. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Well, I'm ready for re-election because I have been there for the last 3 terms. And most importantly, I am an Air Force veteran who was actually stationed at Luke Air Force Base. I'm also a union member with SMART. And being in the district, one thing we have to really realize is, how are we going to improve things? Well, it's better paying jobs that pay livable wages. We need quality, affordable healthcare, pensions, and other benefits and everything. And when we look at the struggles that every working family is going through in LD29, it basically comes down to jobs. I have been the sponsor of the minimum wage bills, raising the minimum wage and paid sick time bills. I've also sponsored a lot of bills that to improve our lives as workers, as essential workers, because I am an essential worker, to expand union membership and everything, because why? Union jobs pay well. And the thing I strongly believe in is we want to address a lot of concerns in the district. That means we need better paying jobs. That means employers have to start paying livable wages and everything else I mentioned before. So that's what I fight for. I also fight for our veterans. I've been successful in getting legislation through. Being a progressive Democrat, much less. So being successful and being able to get legislation through goes to show my commitment, and that, yes, I'm able to do things at the state legislature every day. And that's why I'm asking for everybody to re-elect me back in there so we could continue moving our district forward by realizing essential workers are essential. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One of the things that has happened in the last couple of days is the governor extended the moratorium on evictions, right? So on the one hand, okay, it's going to help people who are struggling with their rent, but there's also the multi-housing sector that they still have to pay their taxes. They still have to employ their people. I want to ask you about them. What are you planning to do, or what do you have in mind to help them? Let me start with Senator Casada.
Yeah, no, I think that this the executive orders that were just extended yesterday, I think that was a good thing for the governor to do. I first believe, as a bottom line, that housing is a human right, and our government should treat it as a human right. And unfortunately, this pandemic has exposed a much larger tidal wave of an issue that is coming to Arizona. That is our housing crisis. The costs of rent have surpassed the incomes of so many families in our state that lack affordable housing, and that's a major problem. But it's also a problem for the landlords if their tenants are not able to pay their rents right now. So what we need to do, and what the governor did a little bit yesterday, was get more of that rental assistance out to the community so that they can, if they are going through tough times right now because of the pandemic, if they've lost work, be able to use that money to pay their rent, and allow those landlords to not have to miss out on that money so that they can pay their bills as well. The government has to step in and play a role in this, and that means helping out both renters and the landlords. And I don't think we've done enough of that to this point, but that's what needs to happen.
Teddy, same question for you, sir. You're in the real estate market, so I'm presuming, correct me if I'm wrong, you're pretty familiar with what's going on in that industry.
Absolutely. So right now, with the market the way it is, there's still a lot of buyers out there trying to buy. They're buying homes. There's a lot of people that are still making good money, still able to buy. Yes, there's a lot of the moratorium that's out there right now is going to help the renters, but unfortunately, there's going to be a backlog that's going to have to be due. It's just not going to get. There's no forbearances as soon as the moratorium's over. That these owners are going to have the right. They do have the legal right to pursue the action. They just can't enforce it. But once the moratorium's over, they will be able to enforce that. So we have to make sure that these homeowners as well as these tenants are protected. They have to be protected in order to make sure that these tidal waves of costs that are going to hit them in the future, because it's not going to go away. We can't just assume that it's just going to disappear. Nothing disappears. When you're behind on your mortgage, the banks are going to want their money. They're going to have a situation they have to address.
So what about the landlord, sir? What are you thinking to what do you have in mind to help them?
The landlord is going to need some relief. If it's a tax benefit on a federal level, that's something that needs to be addressed, because the landlords are the ones that are screaming the loudest, and they're the ones with the deepest pockets. So we got to make sure that they are, they have bills to pay too, just like everybody else. We all have to make sure that our properties are intact. We all signed up when we became a property owner that you understand that there's rent's not going to be paid, but when a pandemic hits like this, you don't see this coming. You just know that a situation is going to happen. So you have to make sure that as an owner that they do have some relief, because at the end of the day, they have rents and bills to be paid also.
Representative Andrade, same question to you, sir.
Yes, well, first of all, we got to recognize that COVID-19, the pandemic, what it really has done. So it goes back to what should we be doing, which is putting more investment into the Housing Trust Fund and senior citizens and our homeless youth. Till we start addressing that and start putting more funding, so that way working families have access to funds to be able to make their payments and everything. But we also have to look at the other underlying condition, and which comes back down to what I mentioned already before: a livable wage where they can actually be able to afford to live in a home. Quality, affordable health care, because how many of us are going through medical crises today? COVID-19, yes, but other illnesses that have occurred. My wife's a breast cancer survivor, so I know firsthand when it comes to that issue on having quality, affordable health care, how important that is. And even today, when we talk about pensions and we look at our senior citizens that are struggling, and when you're out in Legislative District 29 and knocking on doors and seeing how our senior citizens are living, the ones that are making it have good pensions from union jobs and other good paying jobs. But
just to go back to the question, sir, just to go back to the question, what do you have in mind to help the landlords? Because they're, this moratorium has been extended now for a couple of months. They also have bills to pay. They have staffers. Some of them have invested in maybe one or two housing units. And so, what do you have in mind to help them?
Well, the same thing. more investment in the housing trust fund to ensure that they're going to get their payments as well and everything. Because when we're looking at multiple owners, multiple dwellings and everything, they're going to need help as well. So maybe going back, when we go back to our special session, if we ever go back to a special session, and later on introducing legislation that's going to actually help out landlords. So that way they're not faced with losing that property as well.
Let me ask you about a tax issue that's probably going to be on the ballot this November, which is a proposal that's going to increase the tax on higher income earners. The revenue of that proposal goes to K-12. I don't believe it's just K-12, it's education in general. Let me ask you whether you think it is the right time right now to raise taxes on people. Let me start with Teddy.
Well, I would have to say right now that being in the real estate market, I've dealt with all levels of income, and I have seen at least 80% of the people that are out there are still working, still surviving. They're working from home. They have the abilities to do that. I've talked to union workers that have been working overtime because they're filling in because their co-partners and co-workers are out because of COVID. I have a lot of people working in the warehouse. So there's a lot of people still working. And when we're talking about taxing the higher brackets of the income, I definitely think that if that's an answer, I haven't looked at the details of what that's going to consist of, but I can say that at the higher brackets, they do get the biggest breaks because they have the biggest loopholes available to them. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that our schools get the proper funding and make sure it doesn't get depleted based on what's going on today. Because right now, I hear a lot of chatter on the streets that the teachers are worried that they feel like they're not going to have jobs in the future, and they feel like the teaching environment is going to change, and that already that the budget's going to be cut. And for me, when we go into session in 2021, I'm coming with a fresh lens and a business perspective is what's going to change the game. Because
it seems to me that you're leaning towards a yes at this point. Thank you. Senator Casada, the same question to you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, first, we believe that our tax code, or I think we all believe, or we hope that our tax code should be equitable, that it should be fair to everybody in our society, and that we should be investing in our kids, our schools, and our educators. And we can do that by voting yes on the Invest in Ed initiative. So I absolutely believe we should vote yes. And this is not a time to be taxing the general public, but it's always a good time to, or right now is a good time to tax the highest of the highest income earners. And that's what this initiative would do. These are the people who can absolutely afford it, even in a rough economy like it is right now. So this is the right time. It's desperately needed. I would urge everyone to vote yes.
Representative Andrade, same question, sir. Given the environment that we have right now, do you think it's time to raise taxes?
Yes, and most definitely, because if you look at our schools, even today, we're talking about, because of COVID-19, the technology that's required in order for our students to succeed and everything. While a lot of our schools in Legislative District 29 don't even have that technology. So we need to do something to take care of our students, because if this pandemic continues on and everything, what are we going to do? We're going to fall behind, and who's going to suffer at the end is our students. So bringing technology into the classrooms is very important. Making sure our teachers have a livable wage, making sure that we're repairing our old schools where the buildings are crumbling, the roofs are leaking, and we need to make sure that we put that investment back into education. Because Arizonians, there have been polls where Arizonians have said, yes, tax is higher for education as long as we keep it in education. So public education, I want to stress that on top of that. So people are willing to pay a little bit extra to make sure that our students are successful to compete in a global economy. So definitely we need to do something, and I definitely support the Invest in Ed.
And with that, we are out of time. Representative Andrade, Senator Casada, Mr. Castro, thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you around.
Thank you.
To our viewers and our listeners, we're going to bring in the next batch of candidates, and we will be right back, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Meet the Candidates, and we have with us candidate and Senator Tony Navarrete, who's from Legislative District 30. I guess I'm going to start you why you're seeking re-election.
Thank you, Luigi, and thank you to the Arizona Capitol Times for providing the space for for us to talk about why we're running again, and also to the Arizona Clean Citizens election. I'm running because not only do I care about the families of Arizona, but having grown up in this district from an early age, I got to see firsthand the needs that were really critical to my success as a young person. So I want to make sure that I'm not only am I continuing my re-election, but I'm also running to continue to fight for the priorities and the issues that matter most to the families of West Phoenix and downtown Glendale. That's issues around criminal justice reform, making sure we're fully funding our public education system, addressing this COVID-19 pandemic in a collaborative way where, families are treated with dignity, and, so taking care of our healthcare system. It's completely overloaded at the moment, but I'm running for re-election to make sure that I continue to be a strong advocate for the families of West Phoenix and Glendale.
Thank you, Senator Navarrete. Some of your allies, if you will, some in the progressive movement would prefer that the governor actually shut down some businesses completely, not just the gyms and the parks, but maybe even the restaurants. Right now, the governor is allowing the restaurants to operate, but at 50% capacity. I wonder what your thoughts are on the idea of shutting down, what they would consider non-essential business completely.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would say to that is, first we started off in this pandemic, making a lot of really bad mistakes. I think early on in February, we were really pushing the governor to get a handle on the COVID-19 pandemic. He eventually, due to public pressure, shut the economy down so that we can get a handle on the virus. And again, families decided to take responsibility. They stayed home, they listened to the governor, they listened to the scientists, and we wanted to make sure that we stayed on top of this. What ended up happening is that the governor was not looking at the data and ended up opening up the economy too soon, and it ended up costing our state more jobs. It ended up increasing unemployment rates here in the state of Arizona and levels that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. So, if I can wave a magic wand, I would do it all over again and really work collaboratively with folks on the front lines that are dealing with COVID-19. That means folks in the healthcare industry, education, employers, chambers, and community members and city officials to really, so that we can really come up with a solid plan. But the truth is, we are where we are today, and we have significant amount of COVID cases. The positive rates are still up. I'm glad that we're seeing more testing in many of our communities. But the fact that many families are still waiting 5 days to 14 days to receive those tests back is very problematic and really gives a lot of families that I serve a lot of anxiety. So there's a lot of work that we still need to do. I definitely.
But to go back to the question, if you were in charge right now, if you had the authority, would you have shut down the restaurants completely?
I look I think to isolate one industry over all the under industries is very trying to play both ways. And the truth is, we needed to shut it all down so that we can get a handle on COVID-19. Putting all the burden on restaurants and putting the burden on mom and pop shops that are struggling and not providing any clarity or stability is really problematic. So would I shut down the restaurant industry? Probably not, but I will work with the restaurant industry so that we can come up with methods that are going to allow them to stay afloat during this difficult time, but also be able to provide this service to their community members that have been longtime patrons of their establishments.
There are other sectors, if you will, that have been shut down. Gyms and bars, for example. Tubing the Salt River, you can't do that anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm getting the impression that you would have preferred that what you would deem to be non-essential business are actually shut down right now. And correct me if I'm wrong there.
I guess what I'm saying is I think we need to work collaboratively to come up with a plan, not a plan that is top-down approach, but really a plan that's working with the industries. We're in a really crappy situation, and I think that this could have all been avoided. I don't want to see our businesses shut down. I have a really good relationship with our small business community, and I talk to our small businesses all the time, and we're talking to business owners and telling them about different programs like the Paycheck Protection Program, different grants from the county. So do I want to see them shut down? I don't want to see them shut down, but we do need to make sure that we are taking the most proper precautions possible so that we can protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And that's what we're elected to do.
The governor also extended, as you know, the moratorium on evictions. And so we solved a problem and we're helping people who may be struggling to pay their rent. On the other hand, we have the landlords, for example, and they're also hurting because they're not getting the payments, and they still have to pay their staffers. They might have had investments. They still have to pay the banks, for example. I wonder, what are your thoughts on helping them?
So I completely applaud the governor, and I really appreciate that he's been listening to the concerns of our Democratic caucus. And the reason I'm running again is to continue to make sure that we're continuing to apply the pressure that he needs to hear. So I applaud the governor for extending that moratorium on evictions. He also stated that he is going to help support some of the landlords that. Many of them are just mom and pop landlords. They have a one home or a second home or two or three homes that they're renting out. These are folks that also live, paycheck to paycheck, and they need the support as well. And if we're trying to get a hold of this, we really need to make sure that we're taking care of our landlords. But if it's going to be the same approach that the governor has done with regular families that have been seeking help from the Department of Housing Services, there has not been the access that folks have expected. There's still a huge backlog and a huge amount of paperwork just to get the help to get by every single month. And so there's still a lot of work that we need to do. But again, I applaud the governor for expanding that moratorium and making sure that he made a commitment to the landlords as well.
We've seen Black Lives Matter protests in the last couple of weeks. Some of those protesters believe that the police should be defunded. And when they say defunded, some of them mean completely wipe out the police's budget, for example. In effect, really abolish the police in that sense. I wonder if you support, where do you stand on this one, sir?
Yeah, so just so you know, Luigi, the main priority that we have to do is make sure that we're listening to the voices that are closest to the pain. And those are the folks that have been, devastated by decades of mistreatment. This is particularly true with the African-American community, with the Latino and immigrant community. And we've seen a recent report by the ACLU released a report that between 2013 and 2017, Latinos and black folks have been disproportionately penalized, have to pay higher fees, serve longer times. So when we're talking about defunding, the police department, it really is about reallocating those resources to making sure that we are reducing recidivism, that we're keeping nonviolent offenders out of our jails, and making sure that the law enforcement isn't seen as counterproductive to the efforts of building community, but really being a partner in this effort. But I really believe that it starts with elected officials making those tough choices about prioritizing investments in communities of color and low-income neighborhoods.
And just to be clear, a lot of these decisions, if you're going to reallocate or redirect, a portion of the police's budget, those are done at the municipal level. The state legislature doesn't have any, cannot really weigh in on the local police unit's budget, correct?
Well, what I can say is that, earlier in June, we actually pushed the governor and the legislature to actually have a special session so that we can actually begin to talk about police reforms. Department of Public Safety, the largest, public safety office doesn't have any body cameras. So I've heard multiple stories where, folks are driving down the highway, getting pulled over by DPS, and they're asking them to search their vehicles without even having a warrant. So I think not only do we need to make sure that we're educating our community on their rights, but also making sure that we're holding the Department of Public Safety accountable. And I've spoken with different folks, from different police unions, advocacy groups. I've worked with different stakeholders so that we can develop a comprehensive approach of how we're going to reimagine law enforcement in the state of Arizona and across the country.
So, there's the idea that in the legislature that if you couple enough votes, like 31 in the House, 16 in the Senate, then you should be able to push through a proposal. There is a possibility that maybe the Democrats take over the House or the Senate, or maybe both. There's always that possibility. If you were, let's say, in leadership in the Senate, and there's a vote that there's a proposal that has 16 votes, but it's like 15 Republicans and 1 Democrat, would you allow that bill to go forward?
Again, if it is rooted, I can't imagine if there's only one Democrat, then I'm going to question it a little bit. And the reason I say that is because
We've seen that on the other side. We've seen in which you have like 30 to 25 Democrats and then just a couple of Republicans in the House.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, as long as it is rooted in and it is informed by the citizens of those being impacted directly, and we're looking at policies, we've put forward different policies in terms of body cameras, making sure there's more transparency on the data, making sure that there's less immunity for law enforcement. So these are things that are common sense, kind of first steps approach. So if those are on the table and only one Democrat's going to vote for it, I will be more than happy to vote for it. But I can assure you that my colleagues stand behind, making sure that we're reforming our police, making sure that we're. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The likelihood of prison reform, police reform as an issue and getting only one Democrat, the likelihood of that happening is pretty much zero, right? But there are controversial proposals that have been introduced, and maybe they have a big number of Republicans and maybe a few Democrats support them. And if you are in a position to kind of block their ability to move forward, I wonder, what you would do.
Yeah, well, I can tell you since day one, since I was elected to the Arizona legislature, I introduced bills to making sure that we can provide earned release credits to, and working with the county attorneys, working with the Department of Corrections, so that folks, especially nonviolent offenders, can have an opportunity to transition back into society and be productive tax-paying citizens. So, what I can say is, like, I'm not afraid to take on this issue. That is why I'm running. Criminal justice is something that has been.
I guess what I'm really trying to get. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but what I'm really trying to get at is the idea that what you need for a bill to pass is 16 votes, right, and 31 in the House, 16, and then of course the governor has to sign it or veto it. So if there is a proposal and it's going to be controversial, for example, if it's only a few Republicans and a lot of Democrats support it, or only a few Democrats and a lot of Republicans support it, I wonder if you would treat that proposal as something that has, of course it has enough support, but you have the ability to block it or to move it forward. What are you going to do?
I can tell you, if it is a good proposal, I will support that proposal. I will push it to get passed. I don't mind taking a solo vote, or I don't mind taking a unified vote. I'm always going to stand by the values and always going to stand behind my votes, because I am voting on behalf of the families of West Phoenix and downtown Glendale. And I won't block efforts to making sure that we can get those reforms done. Absolutely not. I want to advance these efforts.
Let's talk about a tax proposal that was introduced in the legislature, and that's to hike the gas tax. We haven't seen that tax increase in decades. The money, of course, goes to transportation funding. Do you support that proposal?
So first, I want to say that over the last 30 years, we've cut taxes 29 of the last 30 years, and trying to raise taxes on fuel when many working families depend on having to drive 50 miles just to get to their job sites is very problematic. So if we're going to be adding a gas tax, we're really going to be hurting those mom and pop, those small contractors that really depend on that affordable fuel to get the job done. So I have not been a fan of the fuel tax or the gas tax, and I'm going to continue to be a strong opponent against that gas tax as well.
Where do you stand on recreational marijuana, sir?
In terms of recreational marijuana, I'm a big believer in decriminalizing the use of cannabis. We've seen many folks in our community that have been locked up on stacked charges simply for having a joint, for having their little, for having the little zigzags. Maybe they have a pipe on them, and literally getting charged for every single one of them. I want to make sure that this proposition actually gets passed, so that we can finally move forward from criminalizing communities of color. And like I mentioned before, the ACLU released that report. It's people of color that are getting arrested. So I'm a big proponent of decriminalizing the use of cannabis and making sure that we are reinvesting those funds for treatment, for prevention, and supporting access to public education. And that's exactly what that proposition is going to do.
We are pretty much out of time, but I do want to give you the opportunity to address the voters in your district if you have a message for them.
Yeah, so all I want to say is, since I've been elected in 2016, we made an effort as a candidate, as an elected official, to not only register voters in our community, but also educate our families on the issues that matter most. We've heard from families day in and day out. We have teams canvassing. Most of our interns, if not all of our interns and organizers, are from the district that we're running in, and it's something that we hold deeply. And we want to make sure that our families go out and vote and express, their voice at the ballot box, and making sure that they're electing the candidates that reflect their values.
Senator Navarrete, thank you again for your time, sir. Really appreciate your being very patient, and stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you when I see you.
Awesome. Thank you, Luigi. Have a great night.
You too. And we do have
mask up, Arizona. Mask up, Arizona, please.
We're going to be right back with our last batch of candidates, so stay tuned. And we will be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to Meet the Candidates. My name is Luigi Del Puerto. I'm the associate publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. With us is Jay Shin, who is from Legislative District 26. Mr. Chin wasn't able to connect immediately earlier, and so we're giving him the opportunity to meet you, the voters. And so I guess I'm going to start by asking Mr. Chin to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Yeah, my name is Jay Chin, and I'm running for LD 26 State Senate. Why I'm running? I really wanted to stay away from the politics because of my background. I was a desperate political prisoner waiting for deportation back to South Korea. Even though they failed to deport my family back to South Korea, they still sentenced me and my father to the death penalty in 1985. And I became a U.S. citizen in December 1985. And I wanted to be the U.S. Secret Service special agent because my father and I were labeled as a North Korea communist terrorist to assassinate President Ronald Reagan. So that's why I went to work for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice as a prison guard. And working for them after 3 years, I got a job offer from U.S. Secret Service. But at that time, I met my wife, and my wife, family, everybody opposed that. So I just ended up working for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice as a prison guard. and working for them long time as a prison guard. Whenever I go to Chinatown in Houston, and those some inmates, they recognize me and they glad to see me and shake my hands. But that time I have two of my little ones. And one night somebody busted my car windshield. And I know that why that happened, because whatever that information I collect inside the prison, and busted one of the $100 counterfeit rings in San Antonio, Texas. That's why I moved to the new opportunity. So I moved to the state of Arizona here in 2000, and I start my own dry cleaning business here in Mesa, Arizona, and it was successful. And then I look into more things, what I can do for the community. So I organized Asian Bank of Arizona in Chinese Cultural Center in Phoenix. And then I served as a board of director 2005 to 2009. And I also served for the Elders Daycare Center in Mesa, Arizona. It calls Oakwood Creative Care for the dementia, Alzheimer elders. And I get more involved. And then it's more like my civic duty. So then I look at something different, and I want to connect direct flight from here, Phoenix to Asia, so we can bring more Asian companies to here in the Valley, because we don't have that. So we lost all the Samsung, LG, Hyundai, Kia, Toyota, Honda to Texas or state of Georgia, where they have a direct flight. So I'm working on, if I get elected, I'd like to connect Phoenix to Seoul, Incheon international nonstop direct flights to bring more Asian business. And I spoke with Mayor John Giles when he got elected as a mayor of Mesa. I spoke with him how we can create more Asian business along Dobson Road. So finally, this year, we created Asian District, Mesa, Arizona. So we have another brand name to bring more Asian business here in state of Arizona.
Sorry, you're from South Korea, is that correct?
Yes, I'm from South Korea.
안녕하세요.
I said my father was really trying to promote democracy in South Korea in 1970s under the military dictatorship government. So he always, looking for the freedom, democracy. So he tried to promote democracy in South Korea, but ended up more troubles. That's why our family left from South Korea in 1978. And
let me get to some of the questions from our viewers and our listeners. A lot of the questions had to do with how the governor is handling the COVID-19 pandemic. And for example, as you know, the governor has shut down some businesses like gyms and bars. And if you're a restaurant owner, you're only allowed to open up to 50% of your capacity. And I wonder what you make of these actions.
Governors, the 2 months shutdown, lockdown, whatever it is, it kills all the small businesses. I'm a small business owner, and the business what I used to make is more like 1 month sales now is equal to 1 week sales before this pandemic things happened. But I think the United States was not really ready to fight this coronavirus, because we don't have masks when we need, because it's all made in China or somewhere else. We didn't have that kind of industry or medical industry can back it up whenever we need something. So I think it's a mistake, but we have to make a correction on that. keep some kind of medical or whatever essential business, even though paid by the government, we have to have that kind of medical industry business back here in the United States. So it's kind of another lesson that look at the South Korea and the Taiwan, they could handle that coronavirus pandemic right away because they have those industries, medical, biotechs right behind them. But we lost all that kind of business to China and Taiwan or South Korea, I think. So we learned a lesson, and but I didn't like that, But the governor, he make his own decision what he got to do for the public health. So, but
would you support a mandate to require people to wear a mask statewide?
I think it has to be done in the beginning, but now, United States, we really, looking for each individual freedom. And so we are not really, we cannot really control by the government, hey, what you do, because this country is more like a freedom country. So that's another thing. So you cannot force everybody to wear the mask. It's up to you, for your own safety to wear the mask.
There are a couple measures that are going to be on the ballot this November, and people will have the opportunity to vote them up or down. One of them is recreational marijuana and legalize that. I wonder if you support it or if you oppose it.
Oh, I oppose that. When I was working for the state prison guard, I see most of those inmates, they start smoking weeds and then advanced more stronger and stronger drugs and get into the more troubles. So I think it's recreation marijuana is another big mistake. We'll follow like Denver, Colorado, that it will cost more taxpayer to control that outcomes. So it will really destroy those teenage people's lives later on in the future. So it costs more than just your enjoyment. But that's what I think. So I don't think it should be allowed in first place.
What about the proposal to raise the taxes on higher income earners in Arizona, and in the revenue then goes to education? There is an initiative called Invest in Ed, and it's likely going to be on the ballot this November as well. I wonder if you also support or oppose it.
I oppose on that. As only the communist, the socialist country can do that.
Do you care to elaborate, sir, when you call the proposal a socialist or a communist proposal? Yes. I'm sorry, you didn't call the proposal a communist or socialist proposal. You said that this is the kind of thing that happens in socialist or communist countries.
Yes, you can control that.
I'm sorry, so you oppose it?
Yes, sir.
If you're elected to the legislature next year, what is the first thing that you are going to introduce as a proposal?
And my first platform is, as I said, I like to, Arizona is the second fastest growing state for the Asian population here in Arizona. And we just had a lately TSMC, that's Taiwanese company, but they invested here $15 billion to make the microchips, And so, because we don't have that direct flight from here, Phoenix to Asia, that's what will be my first platform, to connect Phoenix to Asia international nonstop direct flight. I don't go to South Korea, but
when was the last time you've been back to South Korea?
Was it last year? I just, almost after 40 years, I just went back to South Korea for the visit.
After 40 years?
Yes, sir.
I'm curious. What did you see? What was your impression when you got there?
Oh, well, it changed a lot, because it was different world since I left in 1978. And then it's just like it's another South Korea. We achieved democracy in 1987. No more military dictatorship government. And I thank, United States Senate and that time that everybody stand up to fight against the military dictatorship government. And the military dictator, he stepped down, and we choose new constitution that term limit for the president for the 5 years, just like in Mexico.
Which part of South Korea were you born, sir, if I may ask?
I was born right next to the Nakdong River. Was the village called Seongsan, was the last defense line during the Korean War, because when communist North Korea and the communist China and the Russia, they all backed North Korea, invade all the way down to South Korea. And South Korea was almost finished, but that was the really last defense line, heavily.
This was when the communist soldiers actually overrun Seoul, right, and were really way down south, correct?
Yes, that's the borderline. That was my village. That's where I'm from. And during the Korean War, my father, he was only 13 years old. And he saw his brothers and elder brother, neighbors, brothers, they all were trapped to the Korean army. And just a few of them came back home. And most of them got wounds. And so not only Korean people, but more than 36,000 U.S. soldiers sacrificed their lives to protect the freedom of South Korea, the land they never been before. They never met Koreans before, but they answered, U.S. government trapped or whatever calls back then. Everybody, served the duty for their, to protect another country for the freedom. So I really thank to Korean War veterans. They are almost, like 88 years and over. They are pretty much all men, and not that many people left.
And we are, Mr. Chin, thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your patience. I'm glad you're able to come back on, and you were able to solve your internet problems. Good luck on your campaign, sir, and I'll see you around.
All right, thank you very much.
And to our viewers and to our listeners, thank you again for spending every night this week with us. I hope that you have been informed. I hope that discussions have been very good for you. And if you are not a subscriber through the Arizona Capital Times, please do subscribe. And we have upcoming events. One of them is Best of the Capitol, which is happening on August 11. Check out our website to learn more about this event. And again, to the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission, thank you for sponsoring this series of Meet the Candidates, and bye for now.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'll keep looking into it.